The ending of Puella Magi Madoka Magica Rebellion is a hotly contested subject in fan circles. While fans are free to like and dislike what they wish, there has been some argument that the ending makes no sense, either due to characterization or because of the established rules of the universe. This essay will attempt to prove these accusations false, starting with characterization. Beware unmarked spoilers for the original series referred to as the anime, and Rebellion. Firstly, and in my opinion most importantly, there is the matter of Homura's characterization. A common argument is that Homura loves Madoka too much to hurt her by tearing her personality from the law of cycles. However, I believe that, by the end of Rebellion, that is not the case. There is no question that at least some part of Homura genuinely loves Madoka, but her obsession with Madoka can, at many points, overrule her love for Madoka. To see why that could be, as well as some of the other reasons that Homura would put her own wishes above Madoka's, let's start at the chronological beginning of Homura's character arc to outline how Homura came to depend on the idolized version she had of Madoka. Homura starts as a timid, nervous character, lacking in self-confidence. Her extended stay at the hospital likely contributed to her self-confidence issues and lack of social skills, as there is no evidence of her having any long-term friendships throughout her stay. The idea is supported by the fact that she has no known contact with any friends or family besides other magical girls and Madoka's family briefly at the end of the anime. Homura admits that she feels worthless and does have a moment of considering suicide, though those thoughts are likely under the influence of a witch's kiss and thus will not be used as evidence for this argument. Even without taking the suicidal thoughts into consideration though, it can be seen that Homura originally had little to no self-worth. After that, Homura finds herself in a witch's labyrinth, facing almost death. However, before the witch can kill her, she is saved by Mami and Madoka. While it is obvious that Homura eventually becomes much more attached to Madoka, there is evidence that she does, in some way, care for Mami as well. There is only one time when she honestly tries to save someone other than Madoka, and even gets visibly upset when they won't listen to her, when Mami is about to face Charlotte. There is an argument to be made that Mami surviving would keep Madoka from being hurt, as well as add one more magical girl to the fight against Walpurgisnacht, but her lack of reaction to Sayaka's downfall and eventual death is evidence against that argument. So, Homura clearly does care for Mami, at least a little. However, her ultimate focus is Madoka. Of course, some of that devotion is out of genuine love, but the obsession stems from the fact that Madoka is the only magical girl, and possibly the only person she has ever befriended, that has not betrayed her in some way. Sayaka and Kyoko are never shown to be friends with Homura. While Homura has worked with both of them, she is shown to be indifferent to Kyoko at best, and the interactions between her and Sayaka are almost always hostile. Whether that is Sayaka accusing her of wanting to sow discord in the group when she tells them about the true nature of witches, to Sayaka snapping at her about using too many explosions, to Homura literally telling Sayaka she would kill her for Madoka's sake. They never seem to actually get along. That leaves Mami and Madoka. However, in one scene, Mami manages to betray Homura 3 times in quick succession. First, when Mami had a meltdown after seeing the true nature of witches, that betrayed the mask of the cool, calm, collected mother figure that she maintained, something that Homura looked up to and relied on. Secondly, the murder of Kyoko and the attempted murder-suicide of the other magical girls betrayed Madoka's, and at that point arguably Homura's, view of magical girls as protectors. And lastly, by forcing Madoka to kill her, Mami betrayed Homura in the worst way possible, ruining Madoka's innocence. Her pity for Mami's fate only reinforces to her that other people aren't worth caring about. That little bit of compassion she has left for Mami only hurts her over and over when she dies. That leaves one single person that Homura can rely on to act kindly toward her: Madoka. In her own words,
My one and my only friend.
After that, it is unclear exactly how many loops of the same roughly 1-month period Homura went through, though Urobuchi did state that the loop was approaching 100 times. However many it was clearly enough to traumatize her, making her unable to connect to the emotions of others. This includes Madoka. Through that disconnect, Homura began to let her obsession with Madoka outweigh her love for her. In essence, the promise she made not to let Madoka be tricked by Kyubey became more important to her than Madoka herself. Throughout the series, Madoka repeatedly tries to talk to Homura. She tries to make her wishes known, and tries to understand why Homura does what she does. However, Homura is unreceptive to any of that. She ignores Madoka's current wishes repeatedly, focusing on the single wish of a version of Madoka that no longer exists. Keeping Madoka alive became the most important thing above all else, regardless of what Madoka wanted. Homura repeatedly tries to isolate Madoka from people she deems harmful to her, seen most prominently as she insists that Madoka just forget about Sayaka, her childhood best friend. Homura does not talk to Madoka about anything that is going on, at least not in any loop that we see. While that does stem from trauma, and she likely has tried it before just based on the sheer number of loops, it still shows a lack of respect for Madoka as a person, making her out to be someone who cannot understand what is happening. She wants Madoka to sit back and trust that Homura knows best. Of course, many will point to the end of the series to counter that. Homura respects Madoka's final wish, doesn't she? She would never go against that like she does in Rebellion. However, there are a few things to consider about Rebellion, not just the ending, that counter this. Firstly, Homura didn't have the means to actually stop Madoka's final wish before that point. She couldn't time travel back to a timeline that had been rewritten. It's entirely possible that her acceptance was a coping mechanism. Even so, let's run with the idea that she did accept that wish at first. Madoka became a magical girl but defeated her own witch and thus did not fall victim to the fate that Homura was trying to prevent. She was safe up in magical girl heaven, helping people as she always wanted. To Homura, it was a bittersweet kind of victory, one which she talked herself into accepting even if she clearly wasn't content with it.
I was so lonely and sad, and no one understood how I felt. I started to think all my memories of you were just things I made up. I thought I was going crazy.
That quote is taken from one of the most important scenes in the Rebellion movie, the discussion between Homura and Madoka in the flower field. In it, Homura once again speaks vaguely, not allowing Madoka to understand what is going on, and through that comes a vital miscommunication.
You're right. That dream does sound awful. But it's okay now, really. I'm not going anywhere, especially if it's so far away I couldn't see you again. I'd never do something like that.
You wouldn't. But how? How can you be so sure?
You know how wimpy I am. If I did anything that makes someone as strong as you cry like this, it would break my heart.
It would break your heart. Leaving us behind would hurt you that much.
Of course it would. I'd hate to leave you and Sayaka. Or Mommy and Kyoko. Or my mom, Dad, and Tatsuya. Even he told me and all our friends from class, too. I wouldn't go if I couldn't see you guys again. I know I don't have the courage to do something like that. Even if I didn't have a choice.
I knew it would hurt you more than anything. But still, how could I have been so stupid? I should have stopped you back then.
Homura is made to believe that the one time she actually listened to Madoka was the one time that would hurt Madoka the most. That is when her doubts about her actions begin, though I don't think that is the exact moment she decides to save Madoka. It is, instead, the peak of her grief, shown symbolically by the flowers turning the colour of her soul gem, then to corrupted witch-like colours. Speaking of her grief, that is another very important factor to consider. Think back to Sayaka's arc in the main series. The more tainted her soul gem got, the more corrupted her ideals became. Her fight for justice became less about protecting people, and more about destroying any perceived injustice. This can be seen when she snaps at Madoka about the unfairness of the power difference between them, as well as the likely murder of the two men on the train prior to her turning into a witch. This is plenty of evidence to show that a person's moral compass becomes corrupted as their soul gem does, culminating in the complete corruption of ideals at the moment a magical girl becomes a witch. Becoming a witch is exactly what Homura goes on to do. Once she hears the Incubator's plan to capture and control Madoka, Homura forces her already corrupted soul gem to turn faster in an attempt to save Madoka. Thus, her main ideal, the protection of Madoka, becomes corrupted as well. There is no cost too great for what Homura perceives as Madoka's safety, even if that cost is Madoka's happiness, her wish, or the entire universe that she built. Homura no longer even cares what Madoka thinks of her or her actions as long as Madoka is safe. And that moment is the moment where Homura becomes the sort of person that would tear Madoka from the law of cycles. From there, it becomes a question of how Homura did what she did. While there are a few possible explanations, I would like to focus on the one that I consider most likely, Homura's wish.
I wish I could meet Miss Kaname all over again. But this time, instead of her protecting me, I want to be strong enough to protect her!
Of course, the first half of the wish is what makes Homura's time loop happen. However, it is the second part of the wish that is important. I want to become strong enough to protect her. Every timeline makes her grow stronger, since the time loop only exists because of her. However, the same could be true about Homura. The time loop would not exist without her either, meaning she should be similarly tangled up in fate. It never comes up though, because her magical potential has already been used. She's already made her wish, so the incubators, the main expositor towards the end of the series, never mentioned it. After all,
because you never asked.
Given that, it's easy to see how Homura could have ripped Madoka from the law of cycles. When Homura became a witch, her wish was corrupted as well as her ideas. The love seen filling her soul gem could actually be her wish accessing the magical potential that Homura gained through being a cause of the time loop. That would give her the power to also rewrite reality to her whims, the same way Madoka did. In essence, it could be her wish making her magically strong enough to protect Madoka according to her corrupted ideals. While I know that the second half of this essay contains a lot of speculation, the idea was not to give a definitive answer on exactly what happened. Rather, it was to give at least one plausible explanation of what may have happened, proving that the events of Rebellion were not impossible given the information that we knew. Once again, feel free to like or dislike whatever you wish. It's not my job to police your tastes, and despite Madoka Magica being one of my favourite shows, I acknowledge that it is incredibly flawed. Even so, I do hope you've enjoyed this essay. Please feel free to comment any theories you have regarding Madoka Magica, or let me know if there's another show or plot point you would like me to analyse like this one. Thank you very much for your time.